Coming in Saturday on Beyond Vibe, I'm joined by Fito De la Parra of the legendary Canned Heat.
And Bob High comes running to the hill. Where do you guys think you are going? And the guys go, well, we're going to report the news. So he grabs one of them and pulls him out of the helicopter and says, no, you are not. We are going to make the news. And we actually pretty much hijacked that helicopter from the press because they were only 2. We were 5. And we look very dangerous. And these guys come and offer me this gig and made me aware of this new musical movement that was happening. Then just a few weeks later, I found myself opening for the Doors and then playing Love-Ins and playing the Fillmore and eventually Woodstock.
Let's work together. Come on, let's work together. Oh, you know what I'm talking about now.
So I had that record under my arm the day I went to the audition. I didn't know that Bob Haidt and Henry Vestine and Alan Wilson were avid record collectors and musicologists. A few months later, Bob told me, I already knew how you play, and there are many other good drummers around. He said, but when you showed up with that record under your arm, I said to myself, this is the drummer for Can. They were high on acid the whole day of Woodstock, the whole experience. My manager was signing the contract of the film, loaded on acid on the stage as we were playing.
That's the manager.
No wonder we didn't get any money.
Ladies and gentlemen, Canned Heat.
Thank you very much, everybody. And don't y'all forget to book it.
Hi there. You're Ryan?
I am Ryan, yes. Hello.
I like your setup.
Thank you very much.
On air lights and all that. That's very nice. Very nice.
I have a little trick as well. I can do 2 cameras. So that's my little party trick.
That's sophisticated there. And the nice lights in the background.
Yeah, we got it all going on.
Yeah, you have a very nice setting there. It looks cozy.
That's the aim. That's the goal. So I'm here with Fito De la Parra of Canned Heat. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having
me. So something I like to do is, I think to really get to know a musician, you have to go back to the beginning. So what first got you into wanting to become a musician?
Well, part of that was my father's influence. He used to take me to watch all these movies about swing music and jazz music, movies of the late 40s, early 50s, the Benny Goodman story, the Glenn Miller story, the Gene Krupa story, another one, famous one too, Orchestra Wives. Those are basically the movies I remember. So my dad used to take me to watch those movies, and I guess he liked American culture a lot, and he liked American music. I grew up in Mexico City. As I said, we were a middle-class family, and my dad used to like, to take me to see those movies. So that was my first contact with music and with the life of a musician. Later on in the 50s, late 50s, Bill Haley and the Comets came to Mexico City. And of course, my dad grabbed the whole family and, hey, come on, let's go see Bill Haley and the Comets. And this rock and roll thing that is coming from the US is a new thing, right? And that really got me when I saw Bill Haley and the Comets. I mean, I was delighted to see this live music, live rock and roll for the first time in my life. And that was the beginning. And my dad used to get me instruments and always talk to me about music and all that. But he always wanted me to have music as a hobby, not as a profession. He used to say the music business is cruel and you have to be ready for it. And he was right. But eventually, I became a professional musician, in spite of him not really wanting me to do that. So at the same time, what kind of a message is he sending me? He takes me to all these movies, takes me to see Bill Haley and the Comets. When I'm 13 years old, he buys me this Here Is Little Richard album, the LP, the famous LP of Little Richard. All this stuff, all this influence, and then he doesn't want me to become professional. Come on.
he's baiting
So
you.
eventually it wasn't him, but it was my teachers. When I was getting my BA, my bachelor's degree, they warned me. My teachers were already my fans. Okay, they used to come see me play and all that. I was playing with bands in Mexico City already, and we were enjoying fame and popularity. So one of my teachers just came and says, "We're going to help you pass and get your degree so your father can get off your back. But don't even try to go to university or become a doctor or a dentist or whatever your father wants you to be." He says, I remember my teacher telling me, "You are going to be a musician. You're going to be doing well." He used to say, "You guys are more important than we are because you make people feel." He says, "We make people think. You make people feel. You are more important." So he told me to go ahead and become a professional musician because I was not going to get the same kind of sympathy that they gave me in university. And that's how I made the final decision to not even try to go into university. I enjoy having my bachelor's degree. I tried hard, passed the exams, etc. And then I started playing professionally around that time.
What was it particularly about the drums that drew you to that? I mean, there's a lot of people, I mean, me included, that think,
yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, my dad got me different instruments. I even play an accordion. They say play an accordion, go to jail. So no, my dad got me different instruments, percussions, and all that. I remember when I got that Little Richard album. I didn't know really how to play drums. I've never taken lessons or anything, but I did assemble a drum kit somehow with cookie boxes and cookie tins, and one of those old-fashioned from the 50s ashtrays that they used to have. They were huge, and they were made of metal with fluorescent colors. They were real campy, this ashtrays they used to have in the 50s because everybody smoked in the 50s. So that was my symbol. And the cookie tins were my drums, my snare drum, and the cookie boxes were my big drums, my tom-toms. And I kind of developed my own style, my own way with my own drums that I made myself back in that Little Richard album my dad gave me when I was 13 years old. You're asking me why drums? I love music, all forms, and I love all kinds of instruments. I play bass, I play keyboards, I play guitar. I say I play, but I am not a bass player and I'm not a keyboard player, but I play them. I have fun with them. I became a drummer, especially because I actually pictured myself playing with a big band. That's really how I started thinking about my drumming. I never thought I was going to play in small groups. And I always liked the idea of being in the background. I didn't want to be in the front dealing with the audience and with the responsibility of being a front man, which is a different thing than being a sideman. So I did like the idea of being in the drums. As I said, one of those things was that I didn't have to deal with that kind of responsibility. Amazing thing that eventually later on, when Alan Wilson, one of the founders of the band and one the best creator of our hit records, Alan, after a while, got tired and got overwhelmed with the audience when we were very famous and all that. So he started singing behind me.
Wow.
And there is this guy that is famous, that has all these hit records and is the #1 band at the time, in 1969. And Alan used to sing behind me for the same reason I was playing drums. He didn't want the responsibility of being on the front, dealing with the audience and all that. He was a very mellow person, very sensitive and vulnerable. He was not like the Bear. The Bear was a big guy, who used to be partying all the time. And he was able to handle the audience very well. Alan didn't want to deal with that. He just wanted to play his music. So anyway, that's the reason why I started playing drums and not other instruments.
I mean, they always say drums is being a drummer is like the best seat in the house for a gig. So, you're right there in it.
Well, sometimes it is, but then you also have to carry them. That is a drag. I always depend on roadies. I like roadies very much. Secretarios, we call them in Mexico, the secres, because I always believe the roadies are the infantry of rock and roll. Many times, the roadies are so essential and so important, and they come through for us. And many of these colleagues of mine, musicians, etc., they never give roadies any recognition or a place in the music business. And I believe they do belong there. And as I said, I call them the infantry of rock and roll. I, as a drummer, have always depended on roadies and helpers, because I cannot carry all these drums and cymbals and all that. I used to have a big Indian guy in Mexico that was able to carry the whole drum kit, cymbals, bass drum, and everything, all in one shot.
Wow.
He had these ropes and stuff, and he was big. And it was amazing. He was an expert. He was wonderful. And he would put all the drums on himself and would carry them and take them to the gigs. But anyway, as I said, yeah, I enjoy playing drums. It's the best seat in the house, but you have to carry them.
Comes with a price.
Comes with a price, yeah.
Of course, so you joined Canned Heat back in 1967. You being that kind of final piece to form, what's classed as the classic lineup. Coming into the band, did you feel that there was something real special there at the time?
Well, when I saw them for the first time, when I recently arrived in the U.S., I went to see them at this funky little place called the Topanga Corral in Topanga Canyon, California. Topanga was one of the first hippie colonies that ever existed. People argue there's still that maybe Topanga was the first hippie colony and not Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. There is a still argument going on between Los Angeles and San Francisco about what was the first hippie colony. So anyway, I went to see the Canned Heat at the Topanga Corral, and I was impressed with them. They were not famous then, and I had just recently arrived, and I saw something at that band that I figured this is a great band. And, they had just hired Larry Taylor. I was there in his first night with the band. And I liked them. I liked them a lot. I never expected that I was going to end up playing with them. Later on, the managers, they were, a few months went by after I saw them for the first time, and I was very impressed. But later on, I was playing with other bands in Los Angeles, around Los Angeles, and somehow the managers of Canned Heat found out about me, about this recently arrived drummer that is making a name for himself, blah, 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 other musicians talking. And they came to see me, and they offered me an audition. And that's when the whole thing started. They hire a place to put Canned Heat and another band, one of my bands, so the Canned Heat members could see me play with my own band. And it was in a place called the Magic Mushroom. I'm talking about these names and these places because they sound so funny now and so old. So vintage,
Yeah.
but they were wonderful. And there was this wonderful music scene going on in the 60s in Los Angeles. The Whiskey A Go-Go, the Gazaris, the Sea Witch, all those places, a lot of live music and a lot of action, So I play in the Magic Mushroom with my band, the Bluesberry Jam. That was the name of that band, which eventually became the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, which became that, So anyway, I played with the Bluesberry Jam. The guys in Canned Heat came to see me, They were playing the same show. We were opening for them. And they liked the way I played. That same night, around 2:00 in the morning, I received a telephone call from Skip Taylor, the manager, and tells me the boys enjoy your playing. They would like to play with you and audition you. And if you want to come tomorrow to a rehearsal, etc. At 3 p.m. in Canoga Park in the ranch. And so that was it. They offered me this audition, and I remember one nice tale about it is that on my way to the audition, I stopped by a record store and I bought a record by Junior Wells and Buddy Guy entitled Live at Pepper's Lounge, one of those old live Chicago blues albums, one of the greatest albums, that Junior Wells made. So I had that record under my arm the day I went to the audition. I didn't know that Bob Haidt and Henry Vestine and Alan Wilson were avid record collectors and musicologists. I didn't know that they were really, geniuses about it. They were experts. And so I show up with a Junior Wells album under my arm. And here I'm with my accent and all. I go, hi, this is I'm Fito and I'm the drummer, blah, 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 Later on, a few months later, Bob told me, I already knew how you play, and there are many other good drummers around. He said, but when you showed up with that record under your arm, I said to myself, this is the drummer for Canned Heat. Because they were having a lot of trouble with their earlier drummer, with Frank Cook, the one that was with them for about a year before, because Frank was more into jazz. He was a jazz drummer, and I guess he found playing blues a little more primitive and more boring. And so that was the situation. So I took Frank's place, and that's how it happened.
I mean, it feels like it's meant to be. I mean, you just deciding to go to the record store and get that. I mean,
yeah, it was an amazing. Yeah, that's an amazing thing because I didn't know those guys were record collectors and experts on that. And of course, I was already totally into the blues, and I was playing blues music and rhythm and blues already for a few years. So actually, when I sat in with them for the audition, I knew everything they asked me to do, and we sounded like we knew each other already. You see, that it was magical, and that whole era was a magical era.
I'm correct in saying that your first gig with Candy was with the Doors, wasn't it?
Yes, we were opening for the Doors. That was the beginning. Our manager Skip Taylor, I guess, was considering managing both bands, and it was I didn't even know who the Doors were, to be honest with you, because I was more into black music, and that's all I was involved in. When the managers came to see me at the Tomcat Club to offer me the audition, I was a clean-cut guy. We used to play with suits and ties and all that, and this guy show up with long hair and this hippie jewelry and stuff, and they tell me, don't you know there is something else going on in music besides this? Because I'm playing in a funky club in Torrance, California, which is the industrial area. 2 blocks away, Etta James used to live there. It was a club that was basically black and white. It was a rhythm and blues club. So I didn't know about any of the new music that was coming out and all that. And this hippie guys show up, and tell me about it. And they say, there is something else. There is a new movement coming out of San Francisco and out of Los Angeles. Do you know who Jimi Hendrix is? And I go, no, you know. But as I said, I was just, I was playing behind the Platters. I was playing behind Mary Wells, behind Etta James. People like that. Those were the people who were coming to the club that I was working at. T-Bone Walker, you know. I was just delighted to be in the house band and backing all these famous rhythm and blues people that I loved and respect. Never expected to become a drummer in a blues rock hippie band, that was just coming up. But it was really amazing. As I said, here I am, clean cut with my suit and ties and all that, playing in a nightclub. And this guy's come and offer me this gig and made me aware of this new musical movement that was happening. Then just a few weeks later, I found myself opening for the Doors and then playing Love-Ins and playing the Fillmore and eventually Woodstock the next year, a couple of years later, and the rest is history.
It feels crazy. I mean, around that time, you've just got this explosion of bands that you look back on now and you think, along with Canned Heat, there's so many historic bands, obviously the Doors and Hendrix, and it's just all from this era. It's like this explosion. Do you think there was something special about that time particularly, because there's so many artists. I mean, I hear people younger than myself now that are still discovering these artists from that era.
Well, the explosion thing, I guess we were all at the right time and the right place. And it had a lot to do also with the integration and the black music and the white musicians recognizing and giving the value to this music, this rhythm and blues and this blues-oriented music that was affecting all of us. I mean, look at the Rolling Stones. I mean, even the Beatles had to be affected by some of this music too. So it was, as I said, it was at the right time. What was called the British invasion had just passed. Okay, had just passed, and it was already the late 60s, and something else was bound to happen. And this had a lot to do with integration, the integration of black musicians and white musicians together, and making all this music that had elements of blues and had elements of many other kinds of music, including Indian music, Middle Eastern, rock and roll, of course, and that's how it happened. It was at the right time, at the right place, and this combination of musicians, and of course the culture too. It was a time where we were trying to pass a different kind of message, a message of peace and love and equality for women, for minorities, for care for animals, for Mother Earth. All those concepts kind of were born out of our generation. And of course, many people before us care for animals and care for Mother Earth, but nobody was really making movements about it and screaming about it and telling the world, you guys, this is happening, we have to stop the war. We have to stop the Vietnam War, and we have to start caring for each other more, and things like that. That was the message, and that's what made Woodstock so magical and so special too.
I mean, you touched on a bit there of kind of integrating different kind of genres and like Indian music and such. I mean, obviously, On the Road Again was the band's first breakthrough hit, where you kind of, particularly with the intro and outro there, you've kind of put in some kind of Indian type psychedelic music there at the beginning, that kind of theme.
We were totally into the drone. The drone is the one key, one thing without changes. And like Charlie Hooker's music, like the boogie, like On the Road Again. Like the drone is hypnotic. The drone is something very special, very primal. And it affects your primal instinct. And that's a part of why the blues is like that too, because the blues is so simple, so primitive. So that's how On the Road Again came out, and the idea of playing that tempura. That's the name of the instrument, the tempura, that plays the drone,
Yeah.
the one keep going on and on and on. And as I said, that has a hypnotic effect. It's very relaxing. It lowers your blood pressure.
So listening to that song is literally good for you.
That's right. It's actually healthy for you. Yes.
When you were, in the studio, recording that song, was it something that just kind of came together naturally? I mean, obviously you guys had been playing together for a bit at that point. Was it like
when I talk about magical, it was almost magical. The recordings of On the Road Again and the Boogie with Canned Heat LP, that's where that song is in. The recording session was almost like a party. It was amazing. We had girlfriends, wives, friends, fans, a few journalists like yourself, 2 or 3 friendly journalists, producers, everybody sitting around in the studio, in Liberty Studio in Los Angeles. We had food, munchies, marijuana, a couple of beers. It was like a party. And at the same time, we were recording. And it was wonderful. I did sessions the rest of my life. I mean, I've done so many sessions and record so many albums, but never like the Boogie with Canned Heat album. That had that certain purity and the vibe. As I said, we had all these people right there in the studio with us, just keeping them quiet and, rolling joints, fixing munchies, sandwiches, drinks, girls. It was like a party. And that's how the record came out. We didn't over rehearse too much. We didn't believe that playing a song over and over and trying again and again will make it any better. So sometimes you are recording, let's say, a session, and you go ahead and take like 25 takes of one song just to find out that the first take or the second one was the best. So we very much aware of that. We didn't want it to wear out ourselves, wear out the songs or over rehearse or over record. So we will try 1 or 2 takes, and if it felt good and it sounded okay, we will just leave it like that. And that's another thing that we did also when we recorded with John Lee Hooker, because John never agreed to do more than 2 takes. He used to call that stupid shit. He said, more than 2 takes, that's a stupid shit. So,
no pressure, is
he
it?
was right. He was right. And I do believe that, if you know how to play and you have your feeling and your groove together and you know the song, you just go there to the studio, get a sound, and go for it and play it. If you think that playing it 100 times is going to make it better, I don't know. I have my doubts about that.
I mean, it's very true. I've heard a few times, musicians, they do like loads and loads of takes, and they do often go with either that first or second take, and it's
yeah. I'm not the first person telling you this story, because we have all lived through it. We've lived through it. We've gone through the stuff of trying to make it better and better and trying to keep playing a track and another track, coming back the next day and trying the same track again. And then we go back to the very beginning and say, hey, the first take, the second take, they had a natural feeling because we were not thinking about it so much. You see, I mean, when you have a natural, especially in our kind of music, of course, which it depends a lot on the feeling of the moment, because we improvise a lot. We never play the same thing the same way. That's part of the magical about music from the 60s. That is not stiff, pre-programmed, like almost everything now times.
I think that's kind of something that really draws me to that era of music, because it feels a bit more spontaneous, a bit more unpredictable.
You got it. That's the word, spontaneous, improvisation.
I recall reading somewhere that Bob and your manager at the time renting a house that was apparently Elvis's house, which
Yes.
became a bit of a party house apparently. What was
Hey,
kind of
any house where Bob Hyde lived became a party house because that was Bob Hyde's life.
yeah
When he was not playing with the band and playing and singing with the band, he would be in his house playing records for people, for fans and friends and people that admire him. And he always had people in his house. He was always playing records. That was his obsession and his life. He had a fantastic, gigantic record collection, the biggest I've seen. A record collection of 78s, especially 78s, LPs, and 45s. So Bob loved to educate and to show music to people and tell them about blues music and about jazz music. So that was going on Bob's house all the time. The house of Elvis, used to be Elvis Presley house, was behind the Whiskey A Go Go in Sunset Boulevard. It was a very nice house, and it had a swimming pool. And I remember that Bob used to install all his records and his record player and all that. And again, the shoebox full of marijuana and all the other goodies that were part of the Bob Hyde program, daily program. And so eventually, John Mayall ended up in that house also hanging out with us. And that's how he talks. He talks in his Blues from Laurel Canyon record, because after the Elvis Presley house, Bob moved to Laurel Canyon, and I guess John Mayall also hang with him over there. But in the Elvis Presley house, I personally remember seeing John Mayall in a tree, on top of a tree, taking a nap in a tree outside the yard. And it was fun, because I saw the guy and he was taking a nap on top of a tree. And I asked Bob, what is he doing there? And he says, well, he came to hear some records and then he got tired and went up in the tree and took a nap. So that was the story. And Bob had a lot of people coming over to the Elvis Presley house, and we used to go there and swim and listen to records and have a great time. It was a great time that we were enjoying before all the tragedies started happening.
Yeah. I mean, it seems very much like you guys at that time, you just all kind of consumed your life in music. I mean, it feels like you were real kind of enthusiasts. I mean, as you mentioned there, the huge record collections and the trying to get people into blues and all that. It's always interesting, I think, when you get somebody that's obviously they're a musician, but they're also kind of like a fan at the same time. They really enjoy what is going on around them. And
if they were not fans, they would become fans once they got an education from Bob Hyde. You see? And another funny thing is that Bob used to also use his recordings, his playing sessions, to sell records. So he will get people, and tell them, this is a 78, and there are only 3 or 4 in the world, and I have one of them, and now you can have another one if you give me $50 or something like that. So he will play his records and also sell records at the same time he will play them. And I was one of the ones that bought a bunch of records from him. Not only I used to go record hunting with him and Henry, but I used to buy from them, from their collections. And I still have my 78 collection back here. I mean, I can probably show you somewhere back there. And it was really amazing. But so as I said, he used to use that also to sell records.
Become a salesman.
His scam. Yeah, that was his scam. Yeah. Let me turn you on to the blues music and then end up with records in your hand and no money.
Now I think something that's always kind of intertwined with Candy and vice versa. Obviously, we touched on it a little bit back there. Was of course Woodstock. Can you recall kind of what that experience is like? Because I mean, so many people now, it's like this mystical thing, Woodstock, isn't it? Like people are like, "Ooh, Woodstock." What was it like for you at
Yeah,
the time?
yeah, and unfortunately, some people also think about Woodstock '99, the one we
Yes,
call
there
the
was that
trailer,
with the documentary.
you
Yeah,
know, which I saw it the other day, and I was feeling so sorry for all these young people because
yeah,
they were looking for the original Woodstock. They were looking for that kind of feeling and that kind
yeah.
of environment, and and it was totally wrong. I mean, they dumped him in a army base.
Mm.
All they had was concrete. There was no green. No, I mean,
Hey.
it's not like the Woodstock I know. It's totally different, and I don't blame them for being angry and burning the place down because they did. And the promoters had it coming because they were just thinking about money, and that was the problem with that Woodstock '99. That's why when I talk about being at Woodstock, I have to specify I've been at the original
Yeah.
Woodstock and the 1969. There were many other Woodstocks after that, but
Mm.
none like the original. That's something you cannot repeat. It was
Mm.
a cultural event. It was something you cannot repeat. It's something very special that happened that one time, and that's it.
I mean, it does feel like this kind of historic moment. Like so many iconic musicians at the time, and in one place. I mean, yeah, I don't think that you could replicate that again. I mean,
The only way you could get there was by helicopter. Actually, our roadies, again, the infantry of rock and roll,
the
our
heroes.
roadies drove. We played a gig the night before Woodstock around midnight. They left around 1 o'clock in the morning, I guess, New York.
Yeah.
Normally, the drive from New York to Woodstock will be a 2-hour drive. This time it took him, wow, it took him 14 hours because they
Wow.
had to move cars from the road with the help of fans and people that were coming in. They were in the big truck with our equipment, and they were inch by inch moving cars from the road with the help of the other people. They will get 10 people together and move a car away, and then they will go. When we were landing in the helicopter, as we were landing, I saw our truck right next to the stage arriving. And I was just thinking, my God, there goes the roadies again. They came through for us. They drove almost 14 hours from
Mm.
2 o'clock in the morning or so to about 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. that we were arriving. And they made it with the equipment. Many bands didn't have all their equipment. We were one of the lucky ones that had this good road crew that came through and came with the equipment. Actually, I'll tell you the story of our helicopter because we were waiting in the White Kills Airport. White Kills, a little town in New York State, close to Woodstock. And we see a helicopter arriving, and we're waiting at the airport. There is nothing happening. We have to get there somehow.
Yeah.
The helicopter says press, and there's a couple of your colleagues, a couple of journalists coming with their camera and their equipment, going running to the helicopter. So we go running after them. And we were bigger, we looked a lot meaner. These guys, two young journalists trying to get to the helicopter to, report the news. And Bob High comes running to the helicopter. Where do you guys think you are going? And the guys go, well, we're going to report the news. So he grabs one of them and pulls him out of the helicopter and says, no, you are not. We are going to make the news. And we actually pretty much hijacked that helicopter from the press because they were only 2, we were 5, and we look very dangerous. They didn't want to mess with these dangerous hippies. We had to go and get there and play that show and play the boogie for the people at Woodstock. And we were not going to let these 2 guys in the press, take the helicopter. So we took the helicopter and, finally made it. And so that's the story of the helicopter.
I mean, watching some of the footage from that day, it feels like you guys kind of realized this was a special moment. I mean, what was that kind of did anything run through your head when you stepped up onto that stage? I mean, obviously a sizable crowd there.
I couldn't believe it when I was looking at the helicopter, when we're in the helicopter and we see down and see that multitude. I mean, 500,000 people.
Yeah.
My manager, Skip Taylor, grabs his camera. We used to have all those Pentax cameras. They used to be very popular at the time. Nice cameras. He pulls his cameras outside the window of the helicopter and starts shooting the audience. Eventually, one of those photos became the Ravi Shankar's cover for his Woodstock album. They used the photo that my manager took from our helicopter for that album, for the Ravi Shankar Woodstock album. So that's a nice tale to tell. If you ever see that album and see that photo, that was taken by my manager, Skip Taylor, loaded on acid from the helicopter. Because they took acid. 3 of the guys took acid before we jumped on the helicopter. So they were high on acid the whole day of Woodstock, the whole experience.
So
my manager was signing the contract of the film, loaded on acid on the stage as we were playing.
That's the manager.
No wonder we didn't get any money. So that's the way the business work was done in those times, We're playing the boogie, we're playing on the stage. Skip is loaded on us, is signing the film rights.
Oh dear. I mean, did you guys, obviously there's so many people there. Did you guys just stay there for the time? Were you like trapped there or?
No. We left right after the show. I don't even know why, but we left. And I'll tell you another tale. We also hijacked a limousine to get out of there. This is the canned heat. I mean, come on, we're a bunch of outlaws, or we were.
Was there just one there? Or
there was this limousine out there behind the stage with the keys on. We just play our show. We really don't know what to do. We're hungry. We're tired. I mean, getting there was tough too. Remember, I had to wake up really early in the morning. I didn't want to go. I didn't know what Woodstock was. My manager came and opened the door of the hotel with a master key that he got from the administration and dragged me out of the bed, actually. Physically dragged me out of the bed and made me play that gig. He goes into my room and goes, "What's wrong with you? Get dressed and let's go." And I go, "I'm tired. I was tired. I was wasted. I didn't want to play that gig." And put the radio on, put the TV on. Look at what's happening. This is going to be the biggest gig you've ever played. And then he finally convinced me, I put my t-shirt on, grab my drumsticks, a couple of joints, and go. And so as I said, we were doing that. We were waiting for hours before we managed to get that helicopter laying on the tarmac in the airport. So leaving was the same problem. We said, we're tired, we're hungry, we already played. Look at that limousine out there, it's got the keys in it. So Skip Taylor jumps on the limousine and we all jumped on the car and then we take off. As we're taking off, Felix Papalardi from the Mountain band, from Mountain,
Yeah.
He looks at us and sees us leaving and says, "Hey, you guys, give me a lift." So we stop and we open the door and we get Felix Papalardi inside our car and we take off. We ended up again in another little town next to Woodstock. It must have been White Kills or one of those. We end up in the Holiday Inn. We dropped the limousine. We left it there with the keys. I'm sure they were
just abandon it.
It was far away. It was only a short ride. And then we go into the hotel, and they tell us we don't have any reservations for a band called Canned Heat. And they say, but we have reservations for a band called Big Brother and the Holding Company. So we go, we are Big Brother and the Holding Company. '" 'Company. So We hijack a helicopter from the press. We
Unbelievable.
hijack a limousine from somebody, some driver guy, and we took Big Brother and the holding company's hotel rooms after the show. I don't
So
know what happened when they arrived. I don't know if they arrived later, because if they did, we were already in their rooms.
maybe they got turned away. Maybe it was like, well, we've already got them here.
Maybe they got some other. I don't know. In this hotel there was all these kids and all these people laying on the hallways outside the door. You have to realize, I mean, there is 500,000 people in this area, and the area is just it's just a small town, a town where probably fits 30,000 people or so. So they were all over the place, but everybody was nice. Everybody was friendly. Everybody was helping each other. It was just an amazing thing. As I said, it could never be repeated.
I mean, it sounds like a crazy day, but very special.
It's a crazy day for sure. That's why I like to talk about it sometimes. It's all in my book, by the way. I wrote a book called Living the Blues, and the whole story with details is in the book.
So obviously, for those that want to hear even more of that, that whole journey, of course, it's called "Living with the Blues, Canned Heat: Story of Music, Drugs, Death, Sex, and Survival." I mean, hell of a title. That people, the link in the description will be available for that, for people that want to check that out. A song that obviously many people obviously associate with Woodstock as well, and obviously Canned Heat is going up the country. Could you kind of talk a bit about how that song came about? I mean, it's such an iconic song.
Talking about Woodstock, it became iconic exactly because of the festival too.
Yeah.
Whenever you think about Woodstock, you always think of that song. And if you hear that song, it's always easy to think about Woodstock. That's why, for example, this latest Beatles film that came out last year, the new Get Back film,
Yeah.
Paul McCartney sings a little bit of Going Up the Country there. And he sings it going down the country. He goes, going down the country, baby, don't you want to go going down the country? I got a message to Paul. Paul is going up the country. It's not going down the country. Why is going up the country? It's going up the country because you are going up to the Catskill Mountains, to where Woodstock is from New York. It's going up the country, up north from New York. And many people come to me and says, why don't you guys do that song Going Down the Country? I always have to tell them, just like I'm sending that message to Paul. It is up the country. It is up the country, not down the country. The song was inspired by a one-man band called Henry Thomas, one of the old masters of the blues. And the flute part and the music, we copied pretty much the same. Alan wrote new lyrics and changed all the lyrics and made it going up the country, baby, don't you want to go? Some people, there is always some people, the bad people that don't like us or whatever, that they are calling us, that we plagiarize the song, That's not truth. We did copy and got inspired by the musical part, the arrangement and the music, but Alan wrote lyrics, and the lyrics are very important, so that was not a copy. The lyrics are original Alan Wilson lyrics. And, the song was very popular, and it still is. They use it in movies and commercials and all over the place, all over the world.
I mean, it's one of the, I think it's one of the first songs I heard from you guys. I mean, it's, as you say, it's so ingrained in pop culture at this point. It's in movies, adverts. You can't really. I mean, there's a few songs from you guys. You can't really escape it still, even after all these years. It's still around.
Yeah, that's right. And it's Alan Wilson's voice too. He had a very special voice, inspired by Skip James and Mose Allison. Those were the two influences of that voice. Really falsetto with no vibrato. It's a very special way of singing. That, as I said, I can only think of Mose Allison and Skip James, who were Alan's influence on his singing.
I've read somewhere that your kind of personal favorite is "Let's Work Together." What is it about that song in particular that's the one for you?
Well, I love the way we recorded that, and I love the message. It's a wonderful message. It's a message that applies, especially now times, that there is so much division and so much bullshit with the social media and all the stuff. The political stuff is just terrible. So Let's Work Together has that message. It's a great message. But to me personally, I like it because we recorded it so fast. We recorded it again. That was a first take or second take at the most. It was recorded monaural, not even stereo. We probably had 2 or 3 microphones there. That's it. And somehow the sound of the song, the way it came out, if you hear the actual track and you crank it up, it sounds really good. The drum sound, the whole combination of instruments, it came in a sort of a magical way, doing it the way we did it, the way we recorded that. Again, that way of recording cannot be repeated. It happened that day, and even if we tried to repeat it, we could not do it, you see? So that's one of the reasons why I like Let's Work Together a lot. There is no favorite. It's just one of my favorites because the track is really good. The sound is great. The guitar sound is ripping, it's distorted, it's funky, it's greasy. The rhythm section is heavy too, and as I said, the way we did it, it was like maybe 2 or 3 microphones on the room and all live, no overdubs, no stupid shit like John Lee Hooker used to say. So that's one of the reasons why I love Let's Work Together so much.
I think it's one of my favorites as well. There's something
I think
about
in
that.
England, Let's Work Together. In England, Let's Work
So
Together
popular.
has been more famous than the other two.
Yeah, it is something. I mean, ironically, I was in a supermarket the other day, and what was being piped through in the supermarket?
That's okay.
I was just like, it's
That's
still
okay.
here.
I mean, after 50 years, I guess we belong in supermarkets and elevators. But that's okay because I mean, at least it's a funky, heavy song, blues oriented, written originally by Wilbur Harrison, who is the same guy that wrote Kansas City. I mean, that's a great credential there to have. But yes, I've noticed in England they use that song a lot. They even use it for Lloyd's Bank.
Yeah.
In Australia, they use it for Parliament. They were using it for Parliament before the sessions. They were playing Let's Work Together. I mean, that's wonderful, that they find use for that message. I wish that too would become a hit again. It belongs in a hit.
No, I agree. I think
And if we don't do it, somebody else.
it's true. Over the years, there's been many fantastic musicians in the band, and obviously you've moved on now. Was there a moment for you where you had this kind of decision to make? Because I mean, obviously we've had the sad passings. Did you have that kind of thought, or did you think, no, I want to carry on and make this more like I suppose like an institution, like something that's like something to be passed on?
You just said the right word. You just say the right word. Canned Heat is an American institution. You cannot see it as non-valid because the original members, the original founders are not there.
Yeah.
It is the same thing. For example, the Glenn Miller band was playing for many years after Glenn Miller was dead. I think there is even now a Glenn Miller band somewhere that plays occasionally for old folks, swing and stuff. So that's an institution. If you go see the Yankees play some baseball, you're not going to see Baby Ruth, right? You're not going to see Mickey Mantle. you're going to see the Yankees the way they are. That's a baseball institution. We would like to think of Canned Heat in the same manner. It's an American institution. It's a blues band. Of course, to make the decision of continuing, especially after Bob Hyde died, it was not an easy decision to make. But I left it up to the people. Because when Bob Hyde died, we were booked to play in Australia. And Bob died. So the Australian promoter, Peter Noble, contacts me and says, you put a band together, get another frontman, and the people in Australia will accept you, and we will do okay. Please don't cancel the tour. Of course, he was worried about it. He already invested in promotion and all that. So I hired a guy called Rick Kellogg, who was a good harmonica player and good singer. I rehearsed him, and we went to Australia, fearful that we were not going to be accepted. I was worried. I mean, being Canned Heat without Bob Hyde, we already had survived Alan's death. Alan died in the 70s. You know, it was already 10 years later.
Yeah.
But Bob was the front man of the band and the most important member. Even if he was not the one that wrote the hit records, he was the front man. So I had to leave it up to the people, and I went to Australia with that feeling. I said, if they like us there and they accept us, and they like the Canned Heat and they see us as an institution, I will continue. If they don't, and we don't find acceptance, then I'll stop there right after the Australian tour and go to do something else. But it happened, I guess, the best way possible. We were accepted, we were liked. Times had changed. The disco music was not as popular anymore, and there was again more interest in bands from the 60s and bands that played live music, because you have to remember that from the mid 70s to the early 80s, disco was so popular and live bands were just not working.
Yeah.
You know, there was really the disco music was the main thing. And so by the time we went to Australia, right after Bob died, things were changing already. Actually, the night that Bob died, we already had a great audience out there at the Palomino Club, and I had a feeling that things were already getting better. Unfortunately, Bob was already deeply depressed and involved with alcoholism and drugs and all that. He couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, but that's the way it was. So that's how we made the decision to continue working as a band, in spite of many of the non-believers and people that don't like us, or they refuse to accept the Canned Heat because I am the leader and not Bob and all that. I think that is crazy, and I try not to care about people that are negative towards us. I think we have done a great job. We have worked and kept the band together for 54 years. And in spite of all these people against us, and in spite of lack of recognition and a lot of tragedy, I mean, the Canned Heat band has been a very tragic band. We have suffered a lot of loss. We have had great musicians, extremely talented musicians, but they were all self-destructive, and well, you can see what happened to them.
I mean, I often think of, when I see these kind of institution bands, like Leonard Skinner, and they've all been through so much, and I think it's a real testament to yourself and everybody, really, to be able to come through that and still be able to play that music live. And I think it's fantastic to see, just have that music still going. And I mean, you sell out gigs. I mean, that's a vote of confidence, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I know, and we're still selling out gigs all over the place, and she's great. And as I said, in spite of the negative people that are out there, pretty much a minority. Yeah. Most people accept us as we are now, and they accept the band, with me on it. And one thing that I've been very careful with is I've always hired, as I said earlier, the best musicians possible, the best guitar players, keyboard players, singers. You can tell, I mean, by looking at the, our history, you see all the talent that this band has had. Not only the original guys, Bob Hyde and Henry Vestine and Alan Wilson, but all the other guys that I put together, the different lineups. Many of them have been quite good, and I'm very proud of that. And actually, the lineup we have now times is one of the best too, and I'm very happy to be coming back to Europe for the, after 4 years of not coming to Europe, and the COVID thing kind of, stopped the whole thing. We didn't work for 3 years.
Yeah.
But now we're coming back, and we have this new lineup with Jimmy Vivino and Rick Reed and Dale and myself, and we're doing really good. Not only that, we're also recording. We're making a studio album for the first time in 15 years.
Wow.
So we're going to have an album, a vinyl album, done very soon. In the next month or so, will be finished.
Wow. It was that a strange experience? I mean, first time in 15 years, or was it an odd thing to go back and back in that studio, or did you think?
Well, I put this new lineup together with this guy Jimmy Vivino. I don't know if you know who he is. He's not very famous in Europe yet, but we're going to help him become famous. Jimmy used to be the band leader of the Conan O'Brien band on TV.
Yes, I'm familiar.
He was the band leader for the Conan O'Brien band for 21 years. I mean, the guy is an incredible musician. If you recall, if you maybe saw the Conan O'Brien show sometimes, you remember the guy with the hat and the ears.
I've seen it.
That's now our canned heat Jimmy. Jimmy Vivino is in the canned heat now. And I have a new bass player too. Larry Taylor died 2 years ago, our last bass player. And so the band was sounding so good with Jimmy, and we're doing so much good stuff, and that we decided to go ahead and make a final vinyl, which is the title of the record, the final vinyl. But of course, that's my manager's idea. I said, you can say final, but maybe we'll do another one sometime. But
I was going to say, do you think it'll be the
how many bands are doing their farewell tours and then they do another tour?
Will the one after it be the final?
It'll be the final vinyl. Yeah. So we are very enthusiastic about this year. We already play a couple of 4 gigs here in California. We sold out on the 4 gigs, and we're looking forward to come back to Europe. Unfortunately, I don't have a gig in England, and I really wanted to play Glastonbury sometime. We've played just about every festival in England, but we never played Glastonbury. It looks like we might have missed our chance. I don't know. We're getting too old. I don't know. And Glastonbury is dedicated mainly to younger audiences. That's what I've heard.
I mean, it's an interesting thing with younger audiences now. I mean, at least from my experiences, I'm looking at my age demographic of this podcast, and it's predominantly younger audiences. I'm getting requests for old school bands, retro bands from back in the day. I think there's definitely an interest there.
That's good. I've always had faith in young people. I've always had, many people, especially our generation, criticizes the music and the approach that the younger people are using. But some of them are terrible and horrible. Not terrible, horrible. And some of them are like really pretty and really cute, but their music sucks. But some of them are really good, and there has to be room for them. And there are some kids out there playing in garage bands, playing with guitars and drums and pianos and saxophones the way we did music. Those are the ones I have great hopes on. The kids with their computer, making samples and all that. I'm not into that. I like the actual physical playing, the physical act of playing, the craft of playing. And there are kids out there, I'm telling you, I hear them in my neighborhood. Everywhere in the world, there is some garage band been developed the way we did it.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a lot of hope on that. Even if it's not the majority, it doesn't matter. And even if they don't become famous, that doesn't matter either. It's the power of the music. That's what matters. The power of live music being made live, created by humans for humans.
No, I agree. And I mean, it's very interesting with some of the younger artists that I've had on the show. They talk about when they record an album, they're going back to the old way. Like they're saying, oh, I've done it to tape. I've done in a room, with how you guys would have done it back in the day. And I think, again, they speak about
that's the way to find the sound. I mean, you cannot find those kind of sounds electronically. There are many things you can do electronically, of course. The technology is amazing. But if you want to find that good room sound and stuff, we try many things. We try our LP Reheated was recorded with one microphone. We wanted to do it just the way they did the old 78s, with one microphone on the room. That's it. Sometimes you have to try different approaches if you want to get that room sound. Like, for example, I have an engineer that records digital, but then on the transfer, before we master, he uses tubes and old, very old, like 60, 70-year-old equipment from Ampex and stuff, and makes the signal go from the digital to the tubes to enrich it a little bit and make it not as harsh. You see, everything coming out digital is harsh. Once you analog the stuff a little bit more and put tubes to it, or I don't know what it does to the music, it makes it a little more smooth. Just like the LPs, just like vinyl versus CDs or downloads. You see, I don't even hear music in the computer or in the phone, never, because it just don't sound right to me. I'm used to hearing the whole, what we call dynamic range. When you are listening to a download, a little chip or something, you're going to miss a lot. You cannot tell unless you see the difference. You see, that's the whole thing.
I
mean, if all you hear is chips on the telephone or downloads, that's all you're going to hear. But if one day you sit down and you listen to a vinyl record or a 78 through a proper system, then you see what you've been missing.
Exactly. I mean, for years I was told, I was like, oh, vinyl's the way to go, and I was like, I don't know. And then I try it, and I go, actually, you are probably right. Like people kept saying, oh, it sounds warmer. It sounds, it's got that thing. I was like, how can something sound warmer? But
it's something about the analog approach. It's something that it does to music. As I said, it smooths it. It takes away that harshness that the digital thing has not been able to clear, you see. But there is hope, and there is a lot of fun there, and I hope the young people continue to approach music, as I said earlier, as a craft, as something to enjoy and to give, and not expecting fame and fortune out of it. Because that shouldn't be the main reason why you play.
No, I agree. I think we are moving back in that direction.
I think so too. I think so too.
One question I always like to finish on, I ask every guest. It's a bit of a hypothetical one. It's if you could tour with one band from the past and one band from the present, who would they be? I mean, you've toured with a lot of amazing bands over the years, but is there any missing that you'd like to grab there?
Wow, that's a hell of a question. When you talk about bands from the present, man, years go by, and I was collecting. Give me a minute, because I have to tell you this. My manager gets angry at me sometimes because he says I don't educate myself as to what's going on in music now times. Okay. Now, I grabbed this and I saw Time Entertainment of the Year.
Yeah.
And they have these beautiful Japanese girls called Blackpink. You
Okay.
probably know who they are, right?
I have heard.
Well, I mean, there they are. And I read about them and all that. And I said, we are so different, so far away from this. You know, this is pop music. It's okay, do their thing, be beautiful, be young. But that ain't the same thing we were doing. And then I see in the calendar here in the Los Angeles Times this. Do you know who they are?
I'm not
Inside the calendar,
familiar.
I was trying to educate myself because you asked me about current bands. I don't know who the hell any of these people are. I mean, when you're talking about a current band, I think, so, for example, to some band called Green Door.
Right.
That's already an old band. To me, that's one of the new bands. You know what I mean? That's a band I like. I like that Green Door band, you know?
Okay.
But anyway, I see this, and this is called Bells of the Ball. Coachella returns. Boogie Genius, Phoebe Bridgers, Julian Baker, and Lucy Dacus. Do you know any of these people?
I mean,
You asked
maybe
me
I'm out of touch.
This, look, there is inside the picture, and there is all these people. This is the Los Angeles Times Coachella page. I got it because I wanted to see all these people and see if I knew any of them. When you ask me who will I tour with of the new bands, I don't even know who the hell these people are. And I don't relate to their music at all.
I mean,
I wish I did. I don't mean to be prejudiced. I mean,
No,
I'm
I
sure
get
some
that.
of them are very talented. I'm sure some of them are talented and all that, but most of it is, to me, is like very stiff, pre-programmed, stiff, stock pop music. And you see it when you see the Grammys.
Yeah.
If you compare the Grammys with the Grammys 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you will see the Grammys before and you will hear some great saxophone solos, guitar solos, piano playing, musicians playing their instruments. Now, all you see is beautiful faces and beautiful bodies moving around with electronic music behind them, or maybe one drummer or one keyboard player. It's so strange. I cannot relate to any of this. So anyway, to answer to you, what band would I like to travel? Okay, all bands. I mean, I played with John Lee Hooker for 2 years. At the same time as I was playing with Canned Heat. I love traveling with John Lee Hooker and the Coast to Coast Blues Band. That would be a band that I would like to travel still with. We had a ball. We had a ball, and John, even at 84 years old, used to party. And I mean, he was a great guy, not only performing, but partying with him and hanging with him and listening to his tales and his stories about women, all that. It was just so funny. So anyway, that's your answer. I would travel with John Lee Hooker, the John Lee Hooker band, and new bands. My God, I don't know. I mean, I will.
I could give you two that you might like. I could name two that you might.
Well, as
enjoy.
I said Green Door. I saw them playing a couple of times on TV. I thought they were fantastic, and oh my God, I cannot think of anybody.
I mean, there's an artist that I think you'd enjoy, who you might want to check out. He actually plays on the road again, so he's a County fan.
Really? Who?
He's a guy called Jack Broadbent. He does blues music. He's stripped back and he plays with his father. He's like a slide guitar player. He puts it on his lap, and he's extraordinary. I think you'd really enjoy it. Again, he's a guy that talked about doing things to tape, and he's very kind of old school.
By the way, you reminded me of another band, a current band, more newer.
Yeah.
Kitty, Daisy, and Lewis.
Okay.
You know who they are?
I'm not familiar. No.
Oh my God!
You've got one over me.
Now, this is an English band. This is
an English band. Wow. So you've proper got one over me. Yeah. Okay.
Look, And
Yeah,
they
yeah.
release this actually like a 78 setup
Yeah.
with 78s. They play blues and they do going up the country. They do it
Oh,
on TV. They may going up the country famous again. And they have all this like 78s,
yeah, yeah.
They are all
Okay.
good. And also in the album, in the thing, there is a CD. So you can hear all this stuff on CD or on 78s. I don't know where the CD is. But this is a new band for younger people,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they play blues music and they play all kinds of stuff. And they are from England. And as I say, they are called Kitty, Daisy, and Louis.
Okay. It's one to
So
check
now
out
I
then for
tell
sure.
you something. So anyway, this will be another new band that I would
Mm.
love to travel with. I love to play with them. I mean, of course, they play the music I play.
Mm.
Kitty, Daisy, and Louis, wonderful band. You should interview them.
I shall look them up. I'll have to check them
They
out
are no,
now.
they are very popular. They're very popular, and as I said, and they are approaching music the way we were doing it.
Mm.
They play live. You can find them on YouTube a lot. There's a
Yeah.
lot of their stuff there.
Mm.
So anyway, those are the two bands. I will tour with Kitty and Louis and with Green Door. Yeah, Green Door. That's the name of it.
Okay.
I like when they get crazy, when they go crazy. And that's good rock and roll.
No, that's cool. It's interesting choices. Well, thank you very much for joining me. Of
Well,
course, for those,
thank you for your interest. Okay, I hope it comes out good.
hopefully, I think we've got some
I
great.
like your setup a lot. Your setup is really good. Very cozy.
we try to go for cozy. Obviously, for those that want to check out Candy, the link will be in the description for all things Candy. Hopefully, for this new album that'll be out soon. Apparently,
Yeah, and make sure you
um,
visit our website, cannedheatmusic.com. All
mm,
the info is there, all the touring information, the places we're playing. We're playing Belgium, Spain, Finland, Norway, Germany, of course.
mm.
I wish we were playing in England too. Maybe next time, if we're still alive.
Hopefully so.
You never know. You never know. By the time you reach 75 or so, you're on credit already. That's what we say. We're on credit, man. We're on a credit card.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. And
Thank you.
hopefully,
Thank you,
I'll
Ryan.
look forward to the new album. And
Okay, yes, it's good. I'm telling you, I'm not just saying it. It's very
yeah,
good.
mm,
It made make Canned Heat popular again. That's kind of crazy to think that way, but you
you never
never know.
know. Yeah,
We
you
deserve
don't
a
know.
Grammy. We should get a Grammy someday, and we should be included on the Hall of Fame. By the way, we were just included on the California Music Hall of Fame,
Wow, that's cool.
which is something new becoming to compete with the Ohio place, the place in Cleveland, the Rock Hall of Fame. Now
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have the California Music Hall of Fame to honor bands from California, especially, which is where a lot of the music came from anyway.
Mm, exactly.
So those are the good news.